Welcome to Kit Katastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers Siege Deluxe Class Autobot Impactor. This figure came out in 2019 as part of Wave 4 of the Deluxe assortment. Impactor wrecks and rolls onto the scene with his first ever original mold. Siege Impactor makes his debut by turning into a tank that, while nominally Cybertronian, wouldn't exactly be too strange to be seen anywhere on Earth, except for those colors. With his rich light purple and vibrant Keat orange, Impactor looks more like he's decked out for a tailgate at an LSU game than an actual piece of military hardware. I guess camouflage isn't important on Cybertron. Or maybe Impactor wants the Decepticons to know who he is. Here and there, you'll begin to notice a few minor details that separate him from our normal Earthican tanks, such as how the treads aren't quite sitting in line with each other, the double-barrel guns on either flank, the turret being seated way too far back with a pretty big gap underneath, and if you turn the turret, the gap between his thighs will be visible, and of course Impactor's signature shoulder cannon mounted up top. At the front, there are also some spikes slung under the armor, which could possibly be a minesweeper of some sort. They're painted a nice metallic silver, the same color which is used to highlight the bottom of Impactor's skirt armor. This is as far as Impactor goes to take part in Siege's battle damage design ethic, which I think is quite tasteful. Impactor's transformation begins with the swinging around of Impactor's rear flank armor, a move I really didn't expect when I first got this figure. It's a really smart use of mass and allows for Impactor to have a Gerwalk mode. Of course, you could always transform the upper body first instead to allow for a whatever's the opposite of a Gerwalk mode. The tank barrel has to be taken off of whichever arm it's stuck to when you separated them, which is no big deal. I'm not a hypocrite. I don't have a problem with parts forming so long as it's just reserved for weapons. From there, the upper body transformation is very straightforward. My, Impactor is a tall drink of water, isn't he? He rivals Ironhide and Spinister for the tallest deluxe in the line, though that doesn't mean much anymore. I do like how Impactor's color scheme got a lot more balanced through the transformation, since a lot of the yellow got compressed into his legs. He's far more purple now, just the way I like it. We could use some more purple Autobots, couldn't we? We have enough red Decepticons. For some inexplicable reason, the designers at Hasbro decided to give Impactor yellow paint apps on yellow plastic. I really would have preferred red on the legs, but that would have made the quote-unquote Decepticon repaint even more redundant. There's more yellow paint on the titty boxes, though it's applied a little too thinly on this purple plastic. Speaking of yellow paint on purple plastic, there's the head sculpt, which is somewhat reminiscent of Impactor's appearance in the Marvel comic, albeit a little more bulbous and with a more pronounced crest. The face, though, it looks like it was ripped straight from one of those Impossible Toys seekers, with his nondescript mush mouth. This is the least clearly defined face sculpt I've seen on a figure since Power the Prime's Jazz. Let's take a detour to those arms for a second. These four arms are like the perfect shape for this kind of robot. Mwah. Those legs, however, they're as hollow as a politician's promises and emptier than my DMs on a Saturday night. These calf chasms are really egregious. There's really no reason for them to be there. Impactor's tank mode turret came off during transformation, but it can be placed in his hand to become the HP Energon Mine Blaster. It's pretty unremarkable, and cast in the same unremarkable shade of light gray as Impactor's own thighs. He also comes with this thing, the Trilithium Drill, which looks kinda wonky held in his hand. It's a good thing that due to his transformation, Impactor's hands can flip away to reveal a 5mm port, in which the drill will happily seat itself to represent Impactor's signature harpoon. This is usually how I display my copy of the figure. As I take a look at Impactor's very first original mold, I have to ask the question, does Impactor's articulation have an impact on how well I think of the figure? You bet your ass it does. Starting at the head, he has a ball joint, but it's mostly limited to side-to-side action. It's very, very tight, and I think it's because of all this yellow paint on the purple plastic, which makes a lot more friction, and it's not very easy to pose. He can look up, but that might as well just be him looking forward. This is as far up and down as it'll go, and that's not much. So it's basically just a side-to-side thing. He does have a little bit of a head tilt, but again, that's barely anything. The shoulders go out all the way, and to facilitate this movement, the turret actually goes up on its transformation hinge so it can rest against his shoulder very naturally. The arms can also swivel 400 and back 100, forward and backwards in a 360-degree arc, which is all very nice, though they have a soft detent resting place where they're supposed to go for transformation, which is, all the way down. The biceps swivel in a 360-degree arc, and the elbows bend 90 degrees, which is adequate. The wrists don't exactly have dedicated articulation, but they can go inwards just a little bit, but then you start transforming him back into tank mode, or you just put the harpoon on. So it's not really articulation, it's more of just a transformation thing. He has a waist joint that's cut right under his pecs, which is a little high compared to most Transformers, but it is very nice. It can go all the way around, as I just showed you. But right where the waist joint would usually go on a figure is a dedicated ab crunch. Well, it's not dedicated, it's a transformation joint, but it is an ab crunch nonetheless, which is very nice and a very welcome joint to have on this figure. Of course, if you move it too far, then it looks very unnatural and it looks like he's broken in spine. But if you keep it to subtle angles, it looks pretty nice. The hips move forward and backwards on a very stiff joint, and the legs go outwards on a faux ratchet. And that's pretty good. It has about 4 clicks outwards, and it doesn't quite get the full splits, but it's close enough. Okay, never mind, it does get the full splits. So that's good. 4 or 5 clicks outwards, that's not half bad. The thigh swivels are actually immediately above the knee joint instead of up here right below the universal joint, but it does its job. It's just a little awkwardly placed, but it's not really a deal breaker for me. The knee joints just bend 90 degrees, which is pretty boring, but it is adequate. Finally, the ankles do tilt, but they do get stopped by the minesweeper blades in the backs of his feet. They can go more outwards than they can go inwards, but how would you use this for a pose? Is he running along some alleyway walls or something? It's not very useful. Also, his toes can point, but the joint is so loose that I wouldn't really recommend using it for articulation poses.
IMPACTOR came out with his very first original mold, and he came out swinging. Sure, it's not the second coming of Christ, but this is a very solid Autobot tank former with some really clever engineering and design choices. The articulation is superb for its budget, and the playability of the weapons is something special. This figure is an absolute banger, and definitely belongs in the center of your Wreckers collection, if you have one at least. If you're like me, someone who couldn't give less of a shit about the comics and doesn't have any particular attachment to the Wreckers at all, this is still one great figure and well worth a pickup. It's just a shame about that mush mouth and those leg caves, the only things keeping IMPACTOR from getting the Galactic Award. As it is, I have no qualms about giving Siege IMPACTOR the rank of astounding. If you liked this video or otherwise found it helpful or informative, then please subscribe to my channel for more reviews like this in the future, and stay tuned for my next review where I'll be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series Voyager Class Bone Crusher. This has been Katastrophe. Transform and roll out.